Hi, everyone, and welcome back in. I am Shay Rowell of the Rowell Realty Group at Keller Williams Vestavia. And as always, I'm with my main guy, Andy Gagliano.
Hello, Shay. How are you today?
I'm really well today, actually. How are
Good.
you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Mondays are good for me.
Well, that's good. I like that. I like every day. Of course, when you get to be old like me, you'll take every day you can get. So,
You know what? I'm not even going to engage today. Uh, um, do you have a market update for us?
yes. So, really, I'm thinking back and we're stringing together a couple of good market updates. So, really, over the last 3 weeks, rates have improved to flat. So overall, you look at that general trend, we have a flat week offset by a good week, offset by a flat week, and we're still moving in the right direction with rates. So there seems to be a little bit of a change maybe in the direction of inflation, and that really is the main driver for mortgage rates. I've said it on here before and I'll say it again today. You can look back at inflation and the inflation data that's been released and correlate that directly with the direction of mortgage rates. So rate inflation has been trending down, mortgage rates have been trending down. We are for a loan with no discount points, which is what most first-time home buyers are doing because most buyers are limited on their funds to close. And so, in order to get them into that property with as little money out of pocket as possible, most of them are doing mortgages with no discount points and no origination fee, just to keep those closing costs low. And what we're seeing right now is rates in the low sevens, depending on credit scores. And so, you're talking about a 7.25% interest rate. And we've got rates trending in the right direction. I'm going to bounce this right back to you for a real estate update, market update. But what I'm hearing, and you tell me if you're seeing this, what I'm hearing is that some listings are sitting out there a good bit longer and that there's probably some opportunities for buyers to negotiate with sellers.
Yeah, well, we've been saying that over and over since the top of the year, honestly. Well, since last year, that listings have been sitting longer and longer. But honestly, what I've been seeing in my office is more buyers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course, it depends on the area, but I've been seeing a lot of people talk about having more buyers and buyers having to put in more competitive offers. Nothing like what most people are used to when they think of competitive offers, but multiple offers on homes. I personally have seen more buyers come out, but the listings are still sitting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you say that, and really, we're starting to see more activity as far as pre-approvals go than what we saw back in April and May.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think it makes sense now that you say that there's more buyers jumping into the market right now. And w- just as a trend, and I'm one who likes to try to look for trends in things, and especially when it comes to any financial market, the bond market, stock market, whatever else, I'm looking for trends. And what I have seen as far as trends in the real estate market is as we get these announcements that come out every single week from Freddie Mac about interest rates, those announcements where they're talking about rates are actually about the rates from the previous week, not the current week when those rates, or when I should say that news release comes out. So, but still, when we see a trend of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks with Freddie Mac's news release saying mortgage rates have come down, we're starting to see the buyer activity pick up. And of
Hmm.
course, the opposite is true when we're getting those news releases of 3 weeks, 4 weeks of rates going up. the buyer activity slows down. So here we are in a period where we've been 3 or 4 weeks with rates improving, and we're starting to see the logical result of that, which is more buyers getting in the market. So yeah,
The reality of it, Andy, is that there's a lot of misinformation out. And besides that, a lot of buyers are scared. A lot of people are terrified to jump into the market because they have no idea what the rates are going to do.
yeah,
And on top of that, everything's so high, not just in real estate, but like in life. So a lot of buyers feel like they may not be able to, but a lot of buyers feel like they can't afford to get into the market.
yeah. And you know, I totally understand. I mean, as someone who drives a pickup truck, every time I go to the gas station, it's $100+ to fill up my truck.
Ooh,
I don't know about people watching this, but $100 is real money. So, we it's not just that, it's the grocery store, it's our utility bills, it's our car insurance, it's everything. Everything has gone up in price. And so I totally feel that. And, I don't know, maybe that'll stabilize a little bit, or maybe we'll get to a point where those prices might start to come down a little bit. Maybe in the grocery side, I don't think we'll see people. I've been hearing people say for years now, oh, I'm going to wait to build my home until building materials come down.
yeah.
I just don't see that happening. The building materials may come down, but the cost to build is still high. So, I don't know. Is there an end in sight to all this? I don't know. I think anytime we go through a period where there's a lot of change, prices are changing and going up. People maybe don't feel as comfortable about their jobs as they felt in the past. Insurance prices are continuing to go up. When we go through those periods of change, I think just human nature is to pull back and sit back on things for a little while, see how everything plays out, and then get back into the market. So maybe we'll get some stabilization going forward here over the next 6, 12 months with prices and just the cost of everything else out there, and you know get some stabilization in the economy to where people do feel more comfortable about their jobs and spending some money. So
I
we'll
hope so.
see.
I hope so,
Yeah,
but I also think it kind of goes back to what we always say on here. If you can afford to get into the market, or if you can afford to buy now, because the prices of the homes are still going up.
yeah,
So I think that just kind of reigns true more so now than ever. If you can afford it, then you can get into the market.
yeah, yeah. I don't still don't disagree with that. The most buyers today want new or like new construction or homes because they want to be able to move into those homes and not have to do a bunch of work on the weekends. They still want to enjoy their weekends and still go to work on the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and not have projects to do when they come home from that either. So what ends up happening is there's a limited supply of those homes that are like new or brand new. And so those are the ones that are getting the multiple offers on, and are very, it's just a competitive market still for those. And I don't see that changing at all. What are your thoughts?
Also, with them being like new, the new construction, they compete. They're
Hmm.
offering lower interest rates, they're giving concessions, so it is pretty competitive in new
Yeah,
construction. And that's another reason that a lot of buyers are choosing new construction over resale because they can get more out of it. They can get some concessions and they can get a lower interest rate.
true. Very true. Yep. So what's on the agenda for today?
Today, I want to talk about 1099 versus W-2, and I'm very excited about it. I'm start talking fast. I want to talk about 1099 versus W-2. And I kind of want to go into like business owners who are on W-2, but how they still qualify.
Yeah.
So can we talk about how different the process is, or does the process look different for 1099 versus W-2 when it comes to getting pre-approved?
It does. And we consider a 1099 contractor
Hmm.
to be the same as someone who's self-employed. So what we have to do with that contractor is we have to get 2 years worth of 1099s and 2 years worth of personal tax returns to be able to get a history, to establish a history of income for that buyer. And so there are still some deductions and additions that we can make to that 1099 income to come up with the total monthly qualifying income for mortgage purposes. So it's very important that we get those tax returns early in the process for someone who is 1099 so that we can accurately calculate the gross monthly income and the debt to income ratio for that buyer or that prospect. So, yeah, that's the biggest difference. Whereas, for I told you about the 1099, let's talk about a W-2 employee for a second. Typically, with a W-2 employee, we're looking for the last 2 years W-2s. We're looking for the most recent month's worth of check stubs. And that's what we use to qualify or determine what the qualifying income is for a W-2 buyer. So a little bit different situation there. Now, you brought up a great point, and I've got to give you props for this because we see this from time to time. There are self-employed buyers. There are business owners, is probably the better way to say it for this example, who do pay themselves a salary. Maybe they're paying themselves $60,000 a year in a salary, and then they might get some distributions from their company. Whatever the case may be on the company side, we'll talk about that in a second. But let's look at that W-2 income for a self-employed, for a business owner who wants to buy a home. So in that case, we still have to get 2 years of personal tax returns. And if the business is a C Corp, an S Corp, or a partnership LLC or a multi-member LLC, then we have to get 2 years of business tax returns as well. Now, for those self-employed or business owner buyers who have a single member LLC, and what I mean by that is they are the only owner of that business. They don't have a partner in that business at all. They do not have to file a separate business tax return. So in that case, we would just need 2 years of their personal tax returns showing business income for the single member LLC. So again, we're going to use those tax returns, the business tax returns and the personal tax returns to come up with a qualifying amount for income to determine what that debt to income ratio is, plus the W-2s. And so a lot of business owners think, well, if I pay myself on a W-2, I can just use that W-2 income to qualify for a mortgage. And that
Right.
is not true. We still have to see those business tax returns or personal tax returns or both in order to determine that income. And I just had a situation not long ago, probably 6 weeks ago, where the business owner, I'm just going to throw out numbers because I don't remember what anybody's income is. But let's just say the buyer paid himself a salary of $60,000 a year. So you're talking $5,000 a month. So he had been paying himself that much money every year for the past 2 years, but his business tax returns for the last 2 years actually showed a $15,000 to $20,000 loss over those 2 years. So what we had to do was take that $60,000 annual income and deduct the $15,000 or $20,000 business loss showing on that tax return, and that effectively brought that buyer down to $40,000 to $45,000 in annual income to qualify for a mortgage. So, that's the way we look at that. Look, you know, we as consumers are very creative. We're
Yeah.
always trying to come up with ways to get around the system. The mortgage industry's been around the block, and we know how all this stuff works. And the bottom line is, if a business owner is paying themselves a salary and that salary is an elevated or escalated amount and it's causing the business to show a loss, really that buyer should have been paying themselves a salary to bring that business to a zero, no loss, no income at the end of the year. So that's just the way we look at all those things. So yeah,
Question.
very, very big deal. Okay.
While we're on that, is the opposite also true? So, for example, in that buyer who paid themselves 60K, if their business had money at the end of the year, then would that money also be counted towards him? Like, would he be credited that money?
The short answer is yes. So we can, in looking at those business tax returns, that's one of the reasons why we want to see them, because if the opposite is true, that buyer is not showing a loss, they're showing income, then we want to be able to give that buyer all of the income that they've earned,
Right.
even if the business is not paying out those profits to
To
that
the
buyer at the end of the year.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely. The opposite is true. And
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, one last thing on that, and I mentioned this just kind of in passing, there are certain line items on those business tax returns that we can use to add back to a buyer's income for qualifying purposes. So
Like
things
what?
like depreciation is a good example.
Okay.
That's just a paper loss. You buy your business buys a brand new vehicle. The government says, well, the value of that vehicle goes down every single year, so you can depreciate that and deduct the amount of that depreciation from your income as a business owner. Well, why wouldn't you take that as a business owner? And so we can take that paper loss, add that back to someone's qualifying income. So that's probably the most common deduction that we see that we can add back to someone's income for qualifying purposes.
Okay.
So
So, okay. W-2 or 1099 or business owner, you still need 2 years worth of taxes at the end of the day.
that's correct.
Okay. I want to get into what I consider to be the big difference in the way the numbers are calculated, because for W-2, it's calculated one way versus 1099, it's calculated a different way. One is pre-tax and one is after, or I'm not going to say after tax, but after deductions. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. It seems a bit unfair, doesn't it?
Ew, it does.
Uh-huh. As a self-employed buyer, borrower, I've been, gosh, I've been self-employed for well over half of my life now. So it just is second nature to me that I've got to provide those tax returns. And on the surface, it appears that I'm being penalized for taking the deductions that Uncle Sam gives me legally to take from my income. And so, yeah, there's certain expenses there, but the way that underwriters look at that is to say, okay, well, if you are a business owner and you buy a vehicle that you're using for your business and you take that entire expense off of your taxes, off of your income for that year, then that's an expense that if you were a W-2 employee, you may not have had because you wouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily have a need for a business vehicle.
Right.
You would have your personal vehicle, which, by the way, if you're making payments on it, that's being deducted from your qualifying amount as well. So that's why it's not just unconventional loans, it's all of them. Conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, jumbo loans, all these loans look at a self-employed buyer's income in that light. There are expenses that that buyer is going to take that are legitimate business expenses that should come off of that top line income number. So, can I offer an alternative?
I was gonna segue into that.
Well, good. I beat you to it.
Go
So,
ahead.
we we see a lot of self-employed buyers come through our office to try to get a mortgage. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. You know, we tend to, as humans, we tend to hang around those people who are most like us. And because I am a business owner, I tend to have a lot of business owner friends. I guess misery loves company. But but that's one of the reasons. Another reason is, again, I've been self-employed for almost 30 years, and I love helping self-employed buyers. You know, I can go through those tax returns very quickly, very easily, pull the income in that we can pull in, take out the income that we have to take out, and come up with a qualifying amount. I can have an educated conversation with an underwriter to say, no, you're not calculating this income correctly, or yes, I see how you're calculating this, but can we do this instead? And so, because we see a lot of self-employed buyers come through our office, unfortunately, there are a few of them that we have to tell them they can't qualify for the amount of mortgage that they want to qualify for to buy the price house that they want to buy. So there's an alternative out there for those buyers. And that alternative is we have a program that we can use a buyer's business tax returns or personal tax returns. I'm sorry. Let me just scratch that. We're going to start over. A person's business bank
Thank you.
statements
Yeah, there you go.
or personal bank statements. I had tax returns on the brain, but we're talking bank statements now. And we can use 12 months or 24 months of those bank statements for the business or their personal account. We can take the deposits going into those accounts or at that account and use that as qualifying income for the buyer. So that's the good news. We don't even necessarily have to have tax returns. So if
Right.
someone did go out and they bought 3 vehicles, let's say they had a really, really good year for their business in 2023. They met with their CPA in November or December, and the CPA said, hey, do you have any expenditures that you think that you are going to have to make over the next year or 2 years? And that business owner says, yes, we have 2 service trucks that are just on their last leg. We're going to need to replace those. And we really could use another truck because I'm thinking about adding another crew on to payroll. Well, the CPA says, hey, since you've had such a great year, go ahead and buy those 3 vehicles. We'll claim those expenses for your 2023 tax year, and we're going to offset your income by the amount of those 3 vehicle purchases. That is a fantastic plan. You know, that business owner's not buying something just to buy it. They have a
Right.
true need for that, and it's going to bring their income and their tax liability down for money that they're going to have spent at some point in the future anyway. brilliant plan. Great advice the CPA gave them, but that brings their income down so far that they don't qualify. Well, now we can take that business owner's tax, I almost did it again.
Bank
Bank
statement.
statements. We take that business owner's bank statements and we use them to qualify for the mortgage. And there's really just a couple of small negatives to this.
You keep stealing my shine, Andy.
Uh-oh, sorry. You're going to have to just jump in and interrupt me because I seem to not give you any time to talk today. So I apologize for that. So here's the two little negatives for this. And I'm playing this off like they're little. They can be
Yeah.
big. They can be big negatives for some buyers. The first negative is these programs require a larger down payment. A buyer's not going to be able to buy a home with 0 down, 3% down, 5% down. They're going to need at least a 10% down payment to qualify for
Hmm.
this program. Here's another little negative. I said two, but I'm going to throw three at you.
Okay.
Another little negative is that the interest rate's going to be higher. Okay, well, here comes the $1 million question. How much higher can it be? I would bank on or plan on a 2% higher rate than what current market rates are. So when we started the video, I said rates are in the 7 to 7.25% range. That would put the interest rate for this mortgage in the 9.25% range. So here are my thoughts on that. It sounds terrible because we all want the lowest interest rate.
Right.
But let's go back to my example of the business owner that has 3 service vehicles they just put into service in 2023. Let's suppose that reduced that business owner's taxable income by $100,000 in 2023. And let's assume again that that buyer is in the 22% tax bracket. Well, there's $22,000 in federal income tax that business owner did not have to pay in 2023. So if you look at the difference in now let's go over to the mortgage. If you look at the difference in what the payment would be at, say, 7% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage and what the payment would be on a 9% interest rate for a 30-year mortgage, the interest difference very likely is not going to be $22,000. So you save money over here on this side by claiming those deductions that you can claim and not paying the federal income tax, but you pay out a little bit more on your mortgage over here on this side. So to me, if I could save $22,000 in tax and spend $12,000 in additional interest a year, I'm going to opt for the 12 and save the 22, spending the 12
Yeah.
and save the 22. So that's something to think about. The other thing to think about with these bank statement programs is that I forgot where I was going to go with that on number 3. So I've done so much talking, I've talked the thought right out of my head. All right. I'm
And I
going
can't
to
help it
throw
because I only knew the first two.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw it back to you then, and then I'll rack my brain while I'm trying to come up with to remember that third one.
Okay. So we talked about the interest rate. We talked about the down payment on the bank statement loans. Oh, you mentioned the taxable income. So is that the number that they use for self-employed or 1099 or
Yeah,
business owners?
yeah, most of the time. Again, there's
Yeah.
going to be some add backs to that.
Yeah. That I
And
didn't know. I didn't know that.
yeah, and there's generally some things that we might have to deduct from that as well, but
Right.
it's I hate to say that we can use that taxable income figure as a good rule of thumb for qualifying self-employed buyers because it's
There's still
really
stuff that needs
not.
to move. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There generally is some other add back or some other takeaway from that number.
Okay, so if you can't use that as the general number, then what are we to do as self-employed potential buyers if, we want to buy a house and like what how do we even figure what our income would look like to you guys?
Yeah. So here's where things get to be difficult
Hmm, this is where it
for,
gets difficult. Okay.
yeah, for a self-employed buyer. For someone who's W-2, I can say take your gross monthly income, multiply it times 45%, start deducting your debts from that, whatever you're
Right.
left with as far as that final number after you deducted your debts, that's the amount of a mortgage you can qualify for. Well, we can't do that as easily for self-employed buyers because we don't know what that income number is without seeing those tax returns. So
Oh, no, no, no.
when,
That's what I was asking. So like with the W-2 person, you can just say, what is the number of your
right,
income on the tax return? And that is your income.
yeah. So
How do
for,
we do that for the other side?
yeah, for pre-qualification purposes, I have to have tax returns.
Yeah.
And so what a buyer can do is if that buyer does not have a copy of their tax returns and they're they've got a CPA, which I
Yeah.
hope every business owner has a CPA. They can call their CPA and say, "Hey, I'm trying to get qualified to buy a home. Can you send my last 2 years personal tax returns and my last 2 years business tax returns to my mortgage guy?" And the CPA can email those tax returns directly to us. We can again calculate it pretty quickly, pretty easily, and come up with that income number that we then run that same scenario, that same equation through for the W-2 buyers that I just went through.
Okay. So you can do it, but there's no way for us to look at our tax returns and say, okay, well, I should be roughly around here. It's like we know what we make before deductions,
Yeah,
but that number doesn't count.
correct, correct. And I can't say no that you can't calculate it because
Yeah.
if a self-employed buyer is astute enough with their tax returns, you could theoretically you could go online to Fannie Mae's website and pull up Fannie Mae's self-employed income calculation worksheet and start picking your tax returns apart,
Yeah.
and
That's
take the
wild
number
that you
from
even
this
have to
line
do
and
all
that line.
that. That it has to be calculated.
Yeah.
When the other side, it's just the number's already there.
Yeah. Very, very easy for somebody who's W-2.
Yeah.
Much more complicated for a self-employed buyer. But again, you know, I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've run that calculation for self-employed buyers and come up with that income number. So to me, it's a piece of cake. It's just a
Yeah.
normal Tuesday. But, for someone who's not, look, here's the thing. Most of us self-employed people out there, we're very good at running the business. Maybe we're excellent at hiring. Maybe we're excellent at managing. Maybe we're excellent at sales. Maybe we're really good at all those things, but being able to go through and pick a tax return apart for most of us is not our strong suit.
Mm-mm.
So that's why
Mm-mm.
I generally say, hey, just give me your tax returns. You've got a business to run.
Right.
Get me your tax returns, let me calculate it. You go run your business, keep making money. That's what we all want you to do. Make more money and you know, keep the economy going. So, yeah, that's a very good point and it can be done. Like I said, that worksheet, that income calculation worksheet for a self-employed buyer is out there on the internet for anybody to look up and use. But if you're not familiar with reading the tax returns, it could be a little difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Did you come up with the third point?
it's gone. What I should have done is
Oh.
when the third one popped in my head, I should have just gone ahead and done that one because I never would have forgotten the higher interest rate. So it's something that's very minor, but it's there.
Well, I have one more question
Okay.
before I let you go. Okay, so we ran through the big differences. Is there any other like huge obstacle that may come for 1099 versus W-2? Or is it
No, it's
just
generally,
the income?
yeah, it's generally the income, and I will say this, something that we see pretty often, and I wish we never ever saw it, is a business owner who commingles business funds and personal funds. And what I mean by that is, look, again, I'm a business owner. I have personal credit cards that are in my name
Mm-hmm.
that I use for business purposes, but I use them only for business purposes, business purchases. So, what that does for me is if that credit card is being used only for business purchases being made, and I can use a company check or I can have that payment drafted out of the company account, then I can prove to an underwriter that my business has been paying that debt for the previous 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
When I do that, I don't, that debt will not be counted against me personally.
Right.
It's already being deducted from my income because it's being deducted from on my business tax returns. So it keeps that debt, that credit card debt, from being counted against me twice.
Right.
Now, what we see a lot of, way too much of, is a business owner who has one credit card. They go and they buy a ream of paper on that credit card for their business. And then they turn around and their Netflix subscription is coming out of that, being paid by that card. They buy groceries on that card. They pay for a doctor visit on that card. So they've got their business and their personal business, their personal expenses being intermingled. And then they will write a check from their personal account to pay that credit card.
Oh.
And now we don't have a legitimate business expense, and that credit card has to be counted against that buyer's income. So that's a big deal. It's something we see all the time. So for any business owners out there who have, if you have a personal credit card, if even in the past, if you've been putting your personal and business purchases on that credit card, separate them. Get another credit card. Have a personal credit card where you put nothing but your personal expenses on it. Have a business credit card where you put nothing but your business expenses on it. Be sure you have a separate business checking account from your personal business checking account. Do not intermingle those funds because it will make things much more difficult for us when it comes time to qualify you for a mortgage. If you've got 3 credit cards that you truly are using for business purposes, but you're paying out of your personal account, or maybe you've bought a vehicle and it's difficult to get business credit. And I've got a solution for that. For anybody that's out there and wants to build business credit, they can contact me and I can make a connection there for you. But you would get a business or get a personal loan for a vehicle that's in the business's name. That business needs to make the payments to pay that loan every single month, and it does not need to come out of the buyer's personal account. Those payments don't. So That's a big deal, and I would say just be wary of that as a buyer.
That sounds like a bookkeeping nightmare.
You would not believe some of the bookkeeping nightmares that I've seen that have run through here wanting to buy a home. It can we can make things way more complicated than they
And
have
then
to be.
three. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
that's the only other word of caution that I have.
Okay. So the takeaways, file your taxes. That's the number one takeaway.
Please file your taxes.
File your taxes, whether you own a business, you work W-2, whatever, file your taxes. Don't commingle your funds. And call Andy if you're self-employed because apparently he does this.
Yes. Yeah, we can definitely help you out with that. And once we get you qualified, we're going to send you right over to Shay to start looking for houses, and she's going to ask you what that wish list is. So start getting that wish list together. But Shay, when that time comes, how can they reach you?
You can call me at 205-567-9713. What about you?
I'm at 205-979-4412 extension 1.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Shay. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too.
All
That's really
right.
good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Don't be scared if you're self-employed. Get out there, buy a home.
All right.
And I'm done. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Bye.